I'm gonna walk you guys through how to build a custom set of taillights for your car. We are using the illumaesthetic kit, and I will say this is my first time doing this. As you guys can see here, I've already gone through and made one of the boards, and there was a little bit of mishap in some areas, but it's not nearly as intimidating as you may think. We still have an entire other board to go through, and I'm gonna show you guys how to do this because, to be honest, illumaesthetics videos just kind of suck at walking you through how to do it. illumaesthetic, if you see this, it's not a dog on you guys, but as somebody who's never done this and going into this with, and I have wiring experience, I've built engine harnesses for cars from scratch, but going into this, messing with like LEDs, resistors, that kind of stuff, I've never done it before. So coming into it with no experience, it's incredibly difficult to understand their video and kind of follow it for what you're supposed to be doing. Before we even get into the boards, let me kind of show you some of the basic stuff that you're gonna want for doing this if you don't already have it. And I'll link all the supplies and everything we're using down below in the video description, so that way you too can make a super cool set of taillights for your car. Let's start with what illumaesthetic sends you. They send you a ton of different resistors of different ohm sizes. The easiest way to figure out what sizes you're gonna need is just go off their piece of paper that they give you. We're gonna have to group the LEDs into groups of 4, 5, 3, something along those lines. And each grouping size for color will use their own size resistor. So they're gonna give you a whole bunch of different ohm sizes. For us, we're only using two. We're using 270 ohm and 150 ohm. I do have them labeled in these little bins to make my life a little bit easier as I'm going through, because you are gonna be sitting here sifting through a lot of stuff. Next up is the physical LEDs. These, you have no way of telling what color these are unless you power them. So label what box they're gonna be going in and what color you have, so that way you don't accidentally put a wrong color LED in the wrong spot. Then you're gonna have to go in there and fix it, which honestly isn't the end of the world. So outside of that, they also send us some dimming modules, which I have not wired these in yet, so I'm not entirely sure how to wire those in, but we'll figure that out when we cross that bridge. And that should be about what illumaesthetic sends you. Now, outside of what they send you, you are gonna need some other stuff. The first being a soldering iron. I think I got this one on for like 15 bucks off Amazon. Like I said, I'll link all the stuff that I got down below. Next thing you're gonna want is this power supply. So the power supply is gonna let you test the tail light as you're building it, because the last thing that you want is to blindly build these, open up your taillights, install them, put them in the car, and then find out either some are working, none are working, you did it wrong, you burned out LEDs, something along those lines. You're gonna want some paper and a pen, preferably a Sharpie. It doesn't really matter the color, black, silver, something that you can see easily. You're gonna need some basic solder. We are using rosin core solder, flux 1.8%. Once again, Amazon. You're gonna need some wire, so I've got 20 gauge of green and red from some spare engine harnesses that I was building. It's TEF cell wiring, so it's not CCA, it's actual copper wire, which is gonna be a really good conductor. You're gonna want some butyl sealant if your taillights open up and close with butyl, because that's how you're going to reseal them. If you have something like permaseal on your taillights where you can't physically bake them in an oven and open them up, you may need a chemical solution. I believe Morimoto still sells it. If they do, I will link that down below. It's in like a syringe and you inject it in there and it eats away at the permaseal to allow you to open them. Some taillights you do need to cut open, so keep that in mind. I'm not sure how it goes for all makes and models. For the RX7, for us, we can toss them in the oven and bake them open that way and then replace the butyl. You're gonna want some just basic electrical tape. I'm using Kapton tape. Once again, it's leftover from some engine harnesses that I built in the past. Wire crimpers and wire strippers are another thing you're gonna want. You're gonna want some baby diagonal cutters, because this can make your life way easier when it comes to cutting the tips of the LEDs and making it so you can actually work with them in a way. You will probably get stabbed in the fingertips a couple of times and bleed. It's gotten me 3 or 4 times already just doing that one tail light. And then I found having a small tool, this is a timing belt tensioner pin, to be able to bend down some of the LED tips and not stab your fingers helps relatively nicely as well. That should be about it for things that you absolutely need. Oh yeah, for us, illumaesthetic does send some LED strips, so we will have to wire those into the actual taillight housings in the car, which is not a big deal. Let's cover grouping on these taillights and kind of walk through how we're gonna separate it. As you guys can see from this one, the top row is red, the bottom row is yellow. The yellow or the amber is obviously our turn signal, and the red is obviously going to be our brake light, with the running light being the outside of the tail light, which is where those strips are gonna come into place. Now when it comes to grouping, you guys are probably looking at this tail light and being, what the hell is going on there? that looks confusing as hell. And I thought the same thing at first up until I kind of figured it out. So when it comes to grouping, we can only put so many LEDs in a group with the resistor size. And that's where that little paper from illumaesthetic is gonna come into play. There's also a website you can go to, and I'll link that down below. I'm not using it. I'm literally just following this piece of paper. So for us, we need to figure out how many holes that we have and kind of separate our taillight. So for the RX7, it's pretty easy. We have 4 rows of lights here, with the top 2 being red. So I'm just gonna come through here and draw a line to kind of separate the yellow from the red, just so that way I can physically see it a little bit easier. I'm just gonna bring that out, and then right here I'm gonna write R for red, Y for yellow on the bottom. So now we know the top is for our red LEDs, the bottom are for our yellow. Our reverse lights, we don't have any white in these taillights because the reverse lights are in a separate light on the rear bumper. So it's pretty standard and pretty straightforward on this one. So we've got red, yellow. Next thing we need to do is figure out how many holes that we have on the red side and the yellow side, and then find a grouping that works for groups of 5 and groups of 4. Let me count out these holes on this tail light. It was 41 for the red and 43 for yellow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. So it's gonna be same so far. We have 41 red, we should have 43 yellow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 39, 40. 41, 42. Knowing that, we're gonna follow pretty much the same grouping I did on this taillight over to this one. So for the red, we need to have as many of the bigger groups as possible with a maximum group size of about 5 LEDs per group. So we're gonna do a little couple brackets here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put a bracket. So in between those brackets right there on the taillight is gonna be our first set of 5. Then we're gonna do, so we should have 5 groups of 5, then the rest should all be 4. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 groups of 5. So we should have one more group of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the rest are all gonna be groups of 4, because that leaves us with 16 holes left. 1, 2, 3, 4. We figured out our grouping for the reds. We have 5 groups of 5 and 4 groups of 4. 5 times 5 is 25. 4 times 4 is 16. 25 plus 16 is 41. So that's how we get the grouping size. You want to take the total number of holes you have for that color and then find a divisible group of 5 and then a divisible group of 3 into whatever's left over. So for us, that's 5 groups of 5, 4 groups of 4. Now for the yellow, it's a little bit different. We have 6 groups of 5 and 2 groups of 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we've got all of our groups kind of divvied up for the reds and the yellows. So that way, this is gonna tell us where we put our resistors and what we can maximize for groups. Because when I first started doing this, I thought we'd make a group here and then connect it to this group, then connect it to that group, and just kind of daisy chain them, and that's not what we do at all. Off of these groups, we're gonna have a power and a ground, and you can kind of see that on here. The green wire on this taillight is our ground, the reds are our power. So I kind of had it so all the grounds would go through the bottom, all the powers would come up through the top, and we're gonna run them all through a wire, and then those wires are gonna come out to a harness, and that's what's actually gonna power all of these LEDs. So I know it sounds confusing. If you get lost, feel free to ask in the comments. I will do my best to try to help you guys, because I was so lost in the sauce on this before I started doing it. After you do like 2 groups, you're gonna be like, all right, I got this. It's pretty simple. So let's do a group of red. So we're gonna need 5 red LEDs. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right there. If you look at the LED, you're gonna see these 2 prongs. The longer prong is gonna be your positive. The shorter prong is gonna be your negative. So the way that we're gonna do this is I'm gonna kind of angle my positive to come out how I have it on the other tail light. So let me just kind of push that in. And then we're gonna just daisy chain these 5. So it's gonna go power, negative, or positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. So make the positive lead, and I'll show you guys this before we do anything. So actually, let me just get these in. And these just push in. Then to be honest, they do feel pretty sturdy in there. We may throw some hot glue on some of them just to kind of ensure that they don't come out, but I really don't think they will, to be honest. You guys will see all the leads sticking up. So it goes tall lead, short lead, tall lead, short lead, tall lead, short lead, tall lead, short lead, tall lead, short lead for these 5 LEDs. And remember, the tall is gonna be our positive. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bend this positive outwards because that's gonna be the power source for the wire or for 12 volts going into this group. So that one we're not gonna hook up to anything right now. This other one right here is a negative, so we're gonna push that down and we're not gonna worry about that right now either. So we only have these strands left. And what we're gonna do is connect one to the other, one to the other, one to the other, one to the other. So let me kind of divvy this up. We do need to put a resistor in this grouping of 5 though. For a group of 5, if you look at your little paper, if the lights do have a brake DRL dimming function, we have the dimmers that came with these taillights. For red and yellow groups of 5, we're gonna use 120 to 150 ohm resistor. So that tells us the exact size of resistor we need. So we can grab one of our resistors. I'm gonna set this aside for right this second. We're gonna grab our little baby dikes and that little pin thing that I have, which is right here. What we're gonna do is trim these about, we're gonna leave probably a third of the little strand left. And try not to do this around any carpeted areas or anywhere, because I've noticed that these little ends of these LEDs will get stuck in anything cloth. Now we're just gonna fold that power and that negative onto each other, and these are gonna end up getting soldered together. So I'm actually gonna turn on my soldering iron to heat up right now. So we're essentially just creating a little bridge right here where the two LEDs are touching. And we're actually gonna, you can put the resistor anywhere in this group of 5. I think I'm gonna go between these two here. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim this next one down. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna fold over the little bridge. So that way the LEDs can touch. And we're gonna end up soldering these together. So now we're gonna skip one and then go to the last little couple of them right here. Grouping, pair, I guess it's pair. Trim that guy down. Now these two, I'm gonna cut halfway down. And we're not just gonna bend them over to create a bridge. We're gonna go ahead and grab our resistor, and there's gonna be 2 long strands of wire that come off of the resistor right there. And we're gonna wrap one end of each strand around the LEDs, and that's how we're gonna connect these two, is with the resistor. So I like to just kind of hand wire that around. Now if your wire ends up wiring upwards, I found it works kind of nicely with the baby diagonal cutters. You can just kind of push the resistor down. I'm gonna trim off the excess of the LED and then trim off the excess of the resistor. Now we're gonna solder all of these connections up so that way they are nice and strong. If you don't know how to solder, it's pretty easy. Make sure the soldering iron is nice and hot, and you're essentially just gonna put the solder on top where you want and then get the soldering iron to melt it in. And you want it to be silver. You don't want it to be cloudy if you can avoid it to be cloudy, but it's kind of hard for you guys to see. I'm sorry. There's just like not a lot of room for me to be able to try to do this. So we're just gonna solder all of these. Try not to inhale the smoke if you can avoid it. It's not the greatest for you. Resistor. So if I turn on our power supply and I hook up the power to the positive side and then I hook up the ground to the negative side, remember the shorter side of the leg is always going to be your ground. So if we hook that up, we've got 5 LEDs that now work, and we're not going to connect any of these LEDs to any other groups right now. All we're gonna do is go through here and do all of these groupings. The easy way for me to figure out kind of what is power and ground is I have my powers come up and away from all the LEDs, and then I have the grounds come central, so that way I can wire in the yellow and the red grounds together, because the yellow and the red can share a ground, but they cannot share a power. If they share a power, your red and your yellow are gonna turn on at the same time. So if you hit your blinker, it's gonna look like your brake lights are on. So now that we have this one group of LEDs done, we're gonna do all of these other groups. And then after we do all the other groups, then we'll come back and we'll connect them all, so that way all of the reds turn on at the same time. This is gonna take me a little while, so let me just kind of get to town soldering all these up. of our groups put in the taillight. Now you guys will see there's some prongs sticking facing upwards and some facing downwards. All of the ones I have facing downwards are the grounds because those are gonna go to a central wire that we're gonna run for the ground for these taillights. The powers, on the other hand, are gonna be a little bit different because these are for the red, so they need to be on their own wire. So I'm actually gonna show you guys how to do that real quick, but just to show you guys, if we go through this taillight and we test these groups, you'll see that if we power some, so we've got ground here, power here. That one works. Ground, power, ground, power, ground, power, power, ground, ground, power. You guys will see that they all work. And that's why it's kind of important to have this little power supply up here, is to be able to check this stuff. At this point, we're gonna leave the grounds undone. We're not gonna hook those up, but we are gonna wire up all of the powers to a central point. So that's where I'm gonna grab some of this 20 gauge red wire, and red, I'm just using it as an identification for power. That's it. I'm gonna try to kind of point all of these all these power wires in a flat line going parallel to all the LEDs here, just to keep it a little more compact, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't know quite how much room I have to work with this board once it's installed in the car. So these two I already have soldered together. These two I'm still going to have to solder together. So I know you guys aren't really gonna be able to see this too much. I do apologize. Hold it till it cools. There we go. What I'm about to do, you don't have to do, but in good wiring practice, I am going to insulate that connection with a little bit of heat sleeve, just to ensure that we don't accidentally ground something out, the taillight moves and that wire moves and bumps something it's not supposed to. This way it won't cause any damage, or it won't short out the taillight, pop any fuses, anything like that. So I'm just gonna run some insulating shield down the wire here and then over solder that we just did right here. It's also gonna give it a little bit extra strength, which is always a bonus. So now that connection is insulated for our power, which is pretty cool, pretty neat. So now you're gonna want your Sharpie and your wire, and you're gonna kind of feed your wire where it's gonna be going, and this is where it gets fun. So I will mark on the wire the areas that I'm going to strip back, so that way I can solder that exposed portion of the wire to the actual LEDs to ensure that it has a good connection and that the entire wire is insulated. So these are a special type of stripping wire where you can kind of strip anywhere on the wire, and then sometimes you gotta clean it up with a razor blade, but that's not a big deal. Now we have a bit of exposed wire right there that we can tie into our LEDs, and then we can actually put heat shrink over that too, which will be nice. So I'm gonna trim down any excess off of this. Now for all of our grounds, I'm gonna centralize our grounds from the yellow and the red. So we're not gonna be able to test this properly up until we have all the yellows in, but it's going to make it so we only have 3 wires back here versus having 4 like I have in the other one. That was something that I kind of learned when doing the last one, is if you can. I am pretty happy with that. I actually like this setup a lot better than the way I did the other one. So now that we've got this done, what I can do is actually go ahead and strip the end of that red wire, plug in our power supply, and we can actually just test all of these with just the ground at this point. We're gonna hook up our red wire to the power supply, and that's gonna be our 12 volt. We can take our ground, and then I can just touch any of the grounds and the LEDs should turn on at this point. LED, LED, good, 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 and good. So you can see that our common power wire is doing its job, and all of the LED power supplies are all touching. So remember, each group of LEDs is going to share the long leg into the power wire here, and that is going to be the power supply for the red. So once we have all of the actual red grounds hooked up to a singular ground point like we do these, they will all illuminate at the same time. Now, if you have a bad solder somewhere in a group, you'll see a group go out in your taillight bulbs. So just keep that in mind, but for the most part, it's not too bad. We're gonna do exactly what we just did with the reds over to the yellows. And we're gonna go ahead and get all of the yellows in, get all the resistors in, put them into our groups, and then we're gonna run a singular power wire for the yellows, and that's gonna wrap up to the same point right here that the red does. And then from there, we'll do our grounds and we can test everything, but so far, everything's looking beautiful. I built this crude little diagram that I feel like represents what you guys need to do a little bit better and kind of shows things a little bit easier. So if you need to pause on the video here, you totally can. So this pink ring here is our LED strip, and coming off the LED strip, you've got two wires. It's going to be a red and a black, and the red is going to be your power, the black is going to be your ground, and these two things are going to go up to your dimming module, and at least our instance are. If you're wiring your LED panel, then you would follow this same procedure, but for us, we just did the LED strip up to our dimming module. So on the dimming module, you're going to have 3 inputs on the inside and 2 inputs on the outside. Now on the out for the dimming module, your power is just going to go to your power, so it's going to be red to power for the out, and it's going to be ground to ground coming from the strip. So strip, ground to dimming module, power to power. For the inside, this is all going to go to your factory taillight harness. So your P plus is your parking brake positive. So that is your parking brake or your running lights, and that's going to go into your OEM harness to this slot here. Your B plus is your brake light, so whenever you hit the brakes, that is what that's going to be. And the B plus is going to make it so the strips illuminate brighter. The P plus is going to dim them down a little bit. So the B plus is going to go to your factory taillight harness. Same with the ground. You're going to find the ground on your factory taillight harness, and that's going to go to the in on the dimming module. So now jumping over to the LED panel, this I feel like shows what I was trying to explain a little bit better. So each one of these groups is a group of LEDs. So in this example, I have 5 LEDs per group. So the yellow box is just going to represent the resistor, and this box can be anywhere in this line of groupings. So when it comes to wiring these, you're going to pull off that one prong like I showed you guys and kind of pull it to the side, and that's going to be your positive. That's always going to be the longer prong. On the opposite end of that group, you're going to have your ground, which is going to be the smaller prong, and you're going to bend that away from the grouping. You are not going to connect this prong to this. The groups will all stay independent. Do not connect a group to a group to a group. It's just not going to work. So what you need to do is the ground wire from each group is going to come downwards into a central wire that's going to go up to our ground. It's going to be, I have the same thing shown below just for multiple groupings, and then you're going to have your power wire, which is your 12 volt positive, coming into the longer lead of all of the LED groups. So for this example, we're just saying that all of these are red. If you wanted to have it like the bottom of these groupings right here would be yellow and the top would be like red LEDs, then in that case you would just pull off this power and you would route another power cable going up, just so that way you have 2. So the powers, you're going to have them interconnect if it's all the same color, and those are going to run up, come out, and go to your factory taillight harness for whatever they're controlling, whether it's your running lights, your brake lights, your parking lights, whatever it may be. And then the same thing with the ground, but with the grounds here, you can go ahead and interconnect to the grounds, because a ground is just a ground. It just needs a ground source, so that way it can get its full circuit. So the real thing I wanted to show you guys here mainly is do not connect to this group to this group. don't do that. That's gonna make all the LEDs get super dim. So keep in mind that you're gonna have that one leg coming off for your positive and then the other leg coming off as your negative. So if you need to pause here on the video for this wiring diagram, definitely do so. I feel like this represents what you're looking at a little bit better than trying to have me point at things. My camera unfortunately froze when wiring up the ground wire, but I can still show you guys so that way you guys can at least see what you need to do. But as you can see, both tail lights work. We have 12 volts going to both of the tail lights here. There is our turn signal working beautifully. So if I disconnect all of this, looking at the back of the board, you'll see this one central green wire running down, and that has all of our ground connections off of each group going to it. We've got one separate power wire here for the red side, or this is for the yellow, this is the bottom. So this is our yellow power, our red power coming up. So on the harness itself, we actually have 2 reds, 1 green. The green is our ground. You can use whatever color you want. The 2 reds, one of them is power for the red, one of them is power for the yellow. I didn't have different color 20 gauge wire, so I just had to kind of do it that way, and we'll wire it up. But as you guys can see, all of our LEDs are in. We have both of our actual taillight assemblies built out at this point. So I've actually decided to scrap these lights. I finished one of them, and to be honest, I am just not happy with kind of how they look on the car and how they came out. So this video is just going to be showing you guys how to wire up all of the LEDs and create the LED board. I did go ahead and figure out the dimming module as well. So on these dimming modules, you guys will see that there's an in and an out. The in is from the car and the out is going to the tail light for whatever you're going to be dimming. On the in, you're gonna see ground B plus and P plus. The P plus is your parking brake positive, your B plus is your brake light positive, and then the ground is obviously your ground. Going to the outside where it's going to the tail light, you're just gonna have a positive and a minus, and that's just gonna go to whatever you're gonna be dimming, whether it's strips or the entire tail light, something along those lines. Now, I'll show you guys the one that I have finished, and to be honest, these look phenomenal when they're not in a taillight, in my opinion. And you know, everyone's gonna have their different flavors, everyone's gonna have their different tastes. Some people might love the taillight, others like myself may not. For the RX7, I think a more period correct taillight is the way to go with this car, and not something that is kind of over the top like this. I'm gonna be honest, somebody pointed out it looks like a Dodge Viper taillight, and well, now I can't unsee that. So just to go over the functionality with you guys on this, so this is with all of the lights on, the turn signal, the brake light, and the running light. Now if we come up here, we can disconnect all of it with just one of them. That is our turn signal, so it would flash like that. This one would be our brake light, so it would come on and stay sturdy like that. Now for the dimming module, just to show you guys, this one is the parking light, so the running light. So it's very dim, as you guys can see. Honestly, I might think it's too dim. And then with the brake light version of it, it's a lot brighter, so you guys will see it'll come on like that. And you would normally just wire these to the car and be all hunky-dory and whatnot, but to be honest, what happens if I do both of these at the same time? Am I gonna break it? Yeah, I don't know. So to be honest, I'm not digging the style of these taillights. I don't think they fit the theme of the car. I think a more period correct OEM taillight for something like this, for what I'm doing, is kind of the way to go. But all I see is Dodge Viper taillights now. I didn't show it, but putting the panel inside of the taillight was a real pain in the butt also. I ended up using panel bond because I got frustrated with it, because no matter what I was using, it just wouldn't keep the taillight board in the contour of the actual light itself. So I'm a little bit bummed that I don't love it, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. I've had this kit sitting around for like a year, so at this point it's no harm, no foul, right? And I'm getting a set of newer 99 spec taillights for the cars. But that's all I've got for you guys in this video. Even though we're not using these taillights, I hope that the tutorial of showing you guys how to like wire up all of these LEDs and get it to a working point does help you on your path of building your own illumaesthetic taillights. Like I said, it could just be this car that they don't look fantastic on, and that's just my opinion. Some of you guys might think that it looks awesome on this car, but I hope the video at least helps you guys. If you have any questions, I'll try my best to help you and walk you through any questions that you may have when it comes to building this set. But with that, that's all I got for you guys. So if you like the video, you know what to do. Go and hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver, sight, and whatever color it turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be, I'll put it in one of these corners. No idea which one quite yet. But with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies. Woo!